Welcome to the Music Nut Program. I'm John. Thank you so much for joining me today. As we continue the Album After series, the premise of this series is to focus on an album that comes out after a breakthrough album for a band or artist. Today's album from 1998, Alanis Morissette, Supposed Former Infatuation Junkie. This would be her fourth album on Maverick Records and her second worldwide release. This would follow her 1995 album, Jagged Little Pill. Jagged Little Pill was one of the biggest albums of the 1990s. 33 million albums sold worldwide. 6 huge radio hit singles in the United States and Canada. Several other huge hit singles throughout the globe. 5 Grammys also won for Jagged Little Pill. Supposed Former Infatuation Junkie would arrive 3 years later. A very different album. It sold very well out of the gate. 469,000 copies its first week of release, which was the record for a female artist for 2 years, and it would get broken in 2000 by Britney Spears for Oops, I Did It Again. This album would give Alanis one top 20 hit single in the United States, and it would give a few hit singles in Canada, and it would win the Juno Award for Album of the Year in Canada. Now, for this album, Alanis made an artistic statement. With Jagged Little Pill, this album was influenced quite a bit by grunge, but there was a ton of craftsmanship and hooks on here. The lyrics were very poignant and personal and angst-ridden. If you were growing up in the 90s, it was a time when we were experiencing a lot of angst. This album resonated with a lot of people who've been burned, been scorned. This is an album talking about that, moving on. A universal feeling. This is an album. Now, this is just where I live. You won't find very many used copies of Jagged Little Pill. This album really hit home with a lot of people, and a lot of people held on to their copies of Jagged Little Pill, whereas similar selling albums from that time you can find cheap in music stores all over in my area. This album sold well out of the gate, and then it took a pretty big fall off the charts after the first single. But this album found a different Alanis. It found an Alanis that was more at peace. The guitars aren't leading the way as much on this album. In fact, the guitars are just more here for color. A lot of the rhythms are based on piano. There is a strong Indian influence on here because Alanis had traveled to India before she recorded this album and wrote the songs and recorded the album. As with Jagged Little Pill, the songs and the production were done by Alanis and Glenn Ballard. This album was also very long, 17 tracks, 64 minutes, where Jagged Little Pill was a lot tighter. So let's talk about this album. Very experimental album, an artistic statement. Opening track is Front Row. Now, this shows you something very different right off the bat. There's a lot of drum loops, turntable scratching, very experimental and noisy. Off Kilter. All I really want was kind of an Off Kilter song too. The difference was there was a hook to that song, and we really don't have a hook on this. It's a decent opener, and it leads into Baba, which is very Indian influenced. Loud guitars, the vocals are more distorted, bordering on dreamy vocals in it amidst a pop chorus. It's a stronger track than the opener Front Row, but it's got a nice trance-like melody on it. Thank You was the first single. Thank You is a wonderful song. It would hit number 17 here in the United States. It would hit number 1 in Canada. Very well written. Nice keyboard line on here. Again, it finds Alanis at peace. Very large emphasis on Alanis's vocals. Alanis's vocals, I think, are stronger here than they were on this album, than they were on Jagged Little Pill. This was an excellent single, and I'm surprised this wasn't a bigger single here in the United States. I'm thinking maybe the record companies, radio programmers, they wanted the angry Alanis, but we didn't have the angry Alanis. She had found peace. And that's what this album is about, even though the production could be noisy at times. And there's a lot going on sometimes. Sometimes it could be very quiet too. But her vocals and her lyrics are much more at peace. Like she does still talk about, heartache and breakup, but not much. It's a lot about moving on. Are You Still Mad? Piano ballad, very good and very personal. Are you still mad? Those words start off every line in the verse. The chorus is, of course you are. Very well-crafted song. You got multi-track voices on here. The strings are very elegant, definitely adding to the mood. One of my favorite songs on the album. Sympathetic Character. It's another good song, more trip hop in its delivery, more multi-track vocals on here, very personal chorus, very personal lyrics. That's Alanis's thing, and it's a good song. That It Would Be Good, to me, could have been a single with the acoustic guitars on here. Alanis's voice on there is wonderful, very mellow, and you have some flute playing at the end. Nice touch. And that's Alanis on the flute. The Couch is more dramatic with the keyboards along with the drums. This is decent. Can't Not is very emotional. We got a nice bridge on here that really comes out of nowhere. You don't really hear it coming. You Are, I think, has a nice chorus on it as well. It's another reflective song, nice vocal hook. Again, this could have been a single too. I mean, there's some tasteful guitar playing on here as well. I was hoping there's loud guitars during the choruses, more trip hop during the verses, very poignant lyrics. So this album, it's not so much on the hooks. It's more about the mood. It's about the textures, about the soundscapes. The songs are strong, but they take time to resonate. Whereas Jagged Little Pill, those songs would hit you pretty hard from the first listen. One, again, has a nice vocal melody and accompaniment on it. You got some nice bass and some strings, adding a lot of color to the proceedings. Would Not Come. You got the trip hop beats coming back, loud guitar, deep bass, very hypnotic. Cool song. One thing about this album, a lot of great songs and a lot of singles on the second half of the album. Because now we're on track 13 of a 17-track album. And we get to the fourth single, which is Unsense, which I think is a beautiful song. Between the lyrics, the keyboards, adding that color, And Alanis's voice, it touches my soul. It is wonderfully done. This is Alanis finding closure. The verses on here are based on unsent letters to former boyfriends or friends. Very personal. You have some harmonic at the end. There's a something you heard more of on Jagged Little Pill. Number 58 in the States. That was as high as it charted. Number 9 in Canada. I wrote in my lyrics here, wow, was this not huge? Is it because she's not angry? Because her voice will bring you to tears on this song. I just think a lot of people weren't ready for this side of Alanis. And as I mentioned, this is a grower of an album. This is one that reaps deep rewards with each listen. Wonderful song. As is So Pure, which was not a single in the US, but it was in UK and Europe and Canada. It hit number 14 in Canada. Very joyous chorus on here. This is closer in spirit to what you heard on Jagged Little Pill. Very good song. It does have some experimental tendencies on it as well, but it's a very, very memorable song. Joining You was the second single. It did not chart here in the United States. It hit number 30. In Canada, you got a lot of cool guitar on here, not riffs, but they're there more for flavor, for color. Good track, nice hook in the song as well on an album that doesn't really have too many hooks. Last two songs on an album that's very emotional, tranquil, these are even more so. Heart in a House, Alanis wrote this about her mother. This is on acoustic guitar, complemented by string arrangements. It becomes more rollicking when the drums kick in. Very personal song. Your congratulations. There's different interpretations on who this song could be about. Could this be about Lana's father? Could this have been about another family member? Could this have been about a lover? Because it's a song about trying to find someone's acceptance. Very simple piano line, but very effective and memorable. Very expressive vocals on here. Again, I cannot emphasize how beautiful Alanis's vocals are on this album. And that is the last track of Supposed Former Infatuation Junkie. If I were to rank these albums, this is one of the best albums of 1995. I would give this a 10. It would be in my top 5 albums of 1995. This album would probably be about an 8.5. It's grown on me over time. 6 months or a year, I might give this a 9. Best experience as a piece, even though it's a long piece. But it's a different album. It's an artistic statement. Don't go in waiting for Jagged Little Pill, expecting Jagged Little Pill. You're not going to hear that here. You're going to hear an artist moving forward. And Alanis Morissette is an artist, first and foremost. 8.5. So, what do you think of this album? Do you have Jagged Little Pill? Do you have this album? Do you have any of her later albums? What do you think of Alanis' songs? Did you hear them so much on the radio during 95 to 97 or 98? You're like, I don't really need to buy these albums. I've heard these songs so many times before. Or did you just buy Jagged Little Pill and stop and you still have that album because of what it means to you? Because of what you experienced back in the day and something you can go back to when someone has wronged you. Please let me know in the comments. Just to give you some programming notes, I am recording this right after we just recorded a live show on Grant's Rock Warehouse talking about our top 10 favorite songs from 1986. We had a great panel tonight. We had Johnny Metal, we had BM Bolts, DC Tune Time, Yvonne the Music Man, Stephen Schneed, the CD Junkie, myself, and the incomparable Grant Arthur. We had a great time. We had a very eclectic list. We had a fantastic vibe and rapport in the chat. As always, check the show out if you weren't watching it live when we were recording it. On Wednesday, November 27, join John Clauser and I on his channel, My Music Corner. The premiere will be at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be continuing our series on the Accept studio albums. Up to the Limit is the name of the series. We will be focusing on their 2012 album, Stalingrad. This is their second album with Mark Tornillo on vocals. Our guest this week, Jack Toledano, best known for his excellent YouTube channel, All or Nada, according to Jack. It's Thin Lizzy Thursday continues on the Music Nut program. The next episode will be on Thanksgiving here in the States, Thursday, November 28th. On that episode, I will be discussing Thin Lizzy's 9th album from 1979, Black Rose, a rock legend. Also, a few hours ago, I recorded a new top 10 album show. This is my top 10 favorite albums from 2000. Definitely check that out. There was a lot of requests for that because I had that listed in a poll. I have a very eclectic mix of stuff from 2000 because at that point, I was getting into a lot of other different stuff. I was working backwards, but the music I was getting into in 2000 was more versatile than what I was listening to in 70 and 80, although I love all of those decades that I talked about music for on these videos. So, until I see you again, do what you love, and I'll talk to you soon.